Today is Friday, June 30th, the first day of my 4th of July weekend poker marathon. Hopefully I get off to a great start. I'll come back after the session's over. In this hand, I have ace-queen offsuit in middle position and see two limpers ahead of me, limper 1 and limper 2. They have both been limping very often and seem like typical players that like to see flops. After I raise to 20, they both call, and going three ways to a king-jack-4 flop with two spades, and I have the ace of spades in my hand. I feel this is a board that sets up very well for a multi-barrel bluff, since it is great for my range and not so much for my opponents. The villains can easily have hands with a single pair with not a good kicker that will call one bet, but they might fold to pressure if they can't take the heat, thinking I have one of the big hands on this board, like at least ace-king. With all that in mind, I decided to check it back. I don't like the play, and I think it's a mistake. My default play against players that like to call is stick to value betting, but in this instance, I think a continuation bet is mandatory. I was planning at the table on a delayed continuation bet to get folds from small pocket pairs that could have easily limped preflop and will fold to a bet, but I get bailed out with the nuts on the turn, put a 2/3 size pot bet out there, and the first limper makes the call. Pairs the board with another 10, then the limper ships it all in with a 1.5 times the pot bet. He can easily have a full house here with a hand like Jack-10 that didn't feel comfortable raising on the turn, but my hand is too good to fold. All the draws missed, and he could possibly be doing this with trip 10s thinking they are good. I make the call, prepared to sometimes see a full house. The villain shows Queen 9 of clubs for a smaller straight. I do not understand his play. He should have raised the turn with only losing to my hand of ace-queen, but once the board pairs, he goes all in, mostly getting called by better hands and folding out any bluffs I had. Good for me. I get almost the full double up. Next hand, I see an early position raise from that same player with 10-9 of hearts in the hijack. For sure want to get involved with this hand in position. I make the call, as well as the button. Three ways to the flop, once again. It hits me huge. Top pair with the flush draw. Limper 1 checks. I put out a 2/3 size bet of $25 after the rake. Then get raised by the button to 75 with the action getting back to me. I believe I just have to go with this hand. I don't want to call and play the rest of this hand out of position with less than a pot-sized bet left that will have enough equity to call a turn bet. Even if I give villain a super tight range of all sets and 9-8 suited, and then combo draws and only ace-jack of hearts, with not raising any other nut flush draws, which I think many players would on this board that I'm currently ahead of, I am still almost 50% equity. All in. Turn brings me top 2, and the river is an offsuit king. I ended up losing to pocket 8s for middle set. Nothing much I could have done, I think. Those were my two big noteworthy poker hands from my 4-hour Friday night session, and I cashed out for a staggering $20. Very nice. I'm going to look for that to continue tomorrow. I'm going to try to keep my poker hand analysis to a minimum, so I can include all the poker days without having the video too long. So that's it for today. See you tomorrow. It's Saturday, July 1st, one day closer to Independence Day. Time to get back at it. Same place, same game, same stakes. Let's get it.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California.
All the players folded. And then after that, I decided just to limp along with my ace-6 of hearts in the small blind. Limping seems just fine to me against passive players and keeping the pot small for the time being. Once the big blind calls and the dealer checks, the flop brings us the flush draw. I lead out for a 2/3 size pot bet after the rake again, and the big blind calls. Turn is not the card we're looking for in a second 10, and I decide on a check, not expecting to fold out any pairs. The villain then bets small for 15, which I read at the table is not trip 10s, since that hand I would expect a larger bet. I make the call. I'm ahead of all of the other mini draws on this board. It's a decision between getting more value from check calling from the missed flush draws that will bluff, compared to smaller pairs like a 7 that will call my bet. I decided on checking and thinking the first one was a little better. Villain bets bigger for $35 this time, since he sized up the bet relatively larger on this street. After I call, he shows Jack-8 of spades for a flop gut shot that also turned a flush draw. Pretty good read on the hand. Here I have pocket 9s in the small blind with the under the gun straddle on. I get 4 limps ahead of me. Very standard for this game. Pocket 9 seems to me clearly worth a value raise against a loose pre-flop lineup. Smaller pocket pairs of 6s and lower I feel are hands to just limp along with and set mine. Pocket 7s and 8s seem borderline. With pocket 9s though, I make it 60 to go, thinking I have the best hand when called, or can just pick up a decent sized pot uncontested pre-flop. I do end up getting the first limper to call, then the rest of the limpers get out of the way. There is about a pot size bet left effective. It's just a guess at this point for an unknown player, but it seems to me he has a borderline Broadway hand, like King, Queen, or Ace, Jack, or some type of pocket pair that's smaller than mine. Not thinking I'm likely behind, since a bigger pair could open raise, or just limp raise once I raise to get it all in pre-flop. The flop comes out pretty good, 10-10-7. I put out a bet, thinking I'm usually ahead, and don't want to give a free card to a hand with 2 overs. Villain then sticks in his remaining stack, and I call with it not being much more. Might be ahead, but who knows at live low stakes. Turns out in this instance, I did not have the greatest read on the situation. Villain turns over pocket queens, and I get no help. Sometimes you just run into a bigger hand. 5 hours of play today. Again, not too many noteworthy hands. I end this session down $341. I'm looking to get back at it tomorrow. Hopefully I have a little better luck. See you then. It's now Sunday, July 2nd. Great day for poker. I'm excited to get back on the winning track. I'll see you after the session. Hopefully a winning one.
This Constitution of the United States of America. We the people know. We the people know. We the people, we run the country.
In this hand, I have chipped up to $380 and call an early position raise and a caller right behind him in the small blind with 6-8 of spades. The caller, whom I nicknamed Mexican Station, to better remember his name and associate his play accordingly. He has been playing pretty much every hand and a very wide range, including limping ace-6 offsuit from early position. The early raiser I have seen play one hand when he raised, then continuation bet 3 ways and check folded the turn, so I feel this is a good spot to get in with a suited connector. Flop brings me a big combo draw. I check, the pre-flop raiser bets, and the station calls. I have seen him do this with pretty weak hands, and since he plays so many offsuit aces, there will be a huge percentage of his range when he does this. So I'm mostly just worried about the pre-flop raiser having an overpair. If I just call, I will be left with just over a pot-sized bet, and will have just about the equity to call a bet even if he shows me an overpair. I feel a raise will get many folds, given the player's behavior so far, basically unless the pre-flop raiser has an overpair. And then even if he does, I'm still almost even money. Seems pretty straightforward to me. I make it 125 to go. The first villain shoves all in. I call, and indeed it is an overpair with pocket kings. Turn gives me more outs, but the king on the river is no help. The big draw on the flop doesn't work in our favor once again. Gotta reload. In this hand, 4 limps ahead of me in the small blind. I feel ace-jack off, especially good enough here in this scenario with short stacks and loose pre-flop limpers. I make it 25 to go. The tiny stack calls, as well as a new player that I haven't seen show down a hand. The flop misses me with a very low board. I decide on a bet. I feel I just have too much fold equity to check, especially since the short stack makes this hand essentially heads up. The tiny stack actually folds, Then the new player puts in a raise. I don't think I can call, probably against a better hand. He could have a draw, but not worth the call. I think the overall play, though, was the best line. Next up, I raise an open limper that has previously limped 6-3 suited, so I'm way ahead of his range. A tight player in position calls, both blinds, then lastly the limper. I actually flop an overpair with pocket sevens here, no flush draw. I put out a small value bet out there, thinking I'm very likely ahead. The tight player ends up being my only taker. Now I'm a little worried. I see him playing medium pocket pairs of 8s through 10s this way that I'm behind, but also pocket 4s and 5s that also have a gut shot along with their pair. Then of course all the sets. The turn brings a jack of hearts. I think a check is the best option, not turning my hand into a bluff. Then the villain bets small for 40, less than 1/3 pot. The pocket 8s through 10s look the clearest to me now, but I felt he could do this sometime with a weaker hand than mine, thinking I have a hand like ace-king or ace-queen that he doesn't want to give a free card to with 4s, 5s, or something like 6-7 suited. I call, not sure if it was the best play or not. River is interesting in an ace. I now seriously thought about going all in as a bluff, very credibly repping a hand like ace-king or ace-queen. Just couldn't pull the trigger. I thought that villain with only less than a half-size pot bet would just crank call here. He checks back and shows pocket 9s. Tricky situation each street, but I really feel like shoving that river was the best play. Misstep there, I believe. Maybe a little gun shy after being down early. I top buy in for all I brought, $600 for 2 buy-ins. I raised 3 limpers to 23 with pocket aces. Get fantastic news from who I see as a solid young Asian player. He raises to 75. I almost always see this as a premium holding. I don't want to just flat call and have him possibly get away from a missed ace-king or pocket jacks hand that gets scared by an ace or a king on the flop. I go all in, and he calls, not being that excited after I immediately table my hand. Board brings a king, which isn't the greatest card, but I can easily be ahead of queen-queen or ace-king. Just not here. I do run into pocket kings for a flop boat, and get no ace. Not my day today. Lost $600 in just 3 hours to play, which is a pretty big hit to my small bankroll. I'm going to play one more session July 4th after I do some video editing tomorrow. Hopefully I get back on the winning track. Today is Independence Day. Happy birthday, America. I'm going to start my 4th at the poker tables and then make my way to the golf course. I'm going to switch up the casino location, hopefully for a little better luck. Time to get back on the winning track. First noteworthy hand, I see an open to $12 from what I can already tell is a crazy loose action gambler. He has already called an open raise of 30 with 6-3 suited and ended up stacking pocket kings with a rivered straight. He's definitely not afraid to put the chips in the middle. One additional caller in the small blind that likes to see flops. Easy squeeze spot. I make it 50. 4 times is usually fine, I would say, with one caller. With this player that is extremely likely to give action, I should have actually made it something like at least 65, since he would have likely called that as well. I flop second pair, just against this opponent that would continue with any 10, maybe a worse pocket pair, and then any draw. It is a bet call it off spot. That's how much player dependency matters. The turn would be tricky on either a blank or a draw hitting card, but I don't have to worry about that situation. I take it down right away. Just lost a little value, not raising appropriately pre-flop. Likes flops, has now moved 1 seat to the right, and a tight reg from Brazil that I see almost every single time I play at Ocean's 11 sits directly to my right. There is an early position limper, and a small isolation raise to 10 from likes flops, and a call from the tight small blind. I don't see a raise this small is likely a strong holding, more of something along the lines of raising so that other players don't raise. I make the squeeze play to 50 with King Jack, expecting to get a lot of folds, much more profitable to raise than call and play this hand out of position. The button actually folds out of turn, then we get a surprise call from the tight Brazilian in the small blind. Since I'm familiar with this player's style of play, I'm pinning his range pretty squarely on one notch below premium hands. Pocket pairs, 8s, 9s, 10s, ace queen, or king queen, ace jack suited. Flop is not good for my hand or to bluff, since those middle pocket pairs would call this flop. The only better hand I believe I get to fold is ace jack suited that isn't of spades. I either have to go with the two-barrel bluff or check it back. I feel this player would call down with pocket pairs on this board. He plays a tight range pre-flop, but he doesn't like to get pushed around. So I check back looking to hit a king or jack. Doesn't come. Same thing on the flop, I check back. River, same thing. Get shown 2 red 10s. Those are good. That is actually where my poker marathon weekend has to come to a close, as I had to make my tee time. I cashed out for $291, just a $9 loss. Overall, not the holiday weekend I was planning. Lost $930 over 15 hours of play. Not the greatest win rate, losing $62 an hour. I did get a free buffet though at Ocean's 11, so I got that going for me, which is really nice. Hope you all had a fun holiday and ran a little better on the tables than I did. You can stay tuned in the rest of this episode for a little footage of my golf round, if you choose. If not, see you next time back on the poker felt.
Yeah! Boogie! No! Not good. Oh no! Oh yeah!
For birdie number 3.
Why didn't you just go home? That's your home! Are you too good for your home?
Oh, that's looking sweet. Oh, that's looking sweet. You're fucking killing me!
Neck and neck, closest to the pin.
Did he hit it? Did he hit it? No.
Birdie!
Oh! Bounce in the hole. Oh, that's looking good. Nope, not high enough.
No!
No! He pulls it.
America.